So today we're going to make a little box bag, which you can make in any size you wish. It's got a nice holder here and a bit that goes all the way around the front, and then it's all lined on the inside. And on this side you've got a tab, so when you pull the zip back, it's nice and easy to close. It holds lots, which is good. Simple enough to make. So let's get started. So the one I've got today is going to be around the same sort of size. The reason I've selected this size, because you can use any size you want, is this was actually from a fat quarter. So by the time I straightened it up and quilted it, it's actually 17.5 inches long by 14 inches across this way. You notice I've already quilted it, so I've got my lining on the back, which is just a plain white lining. I've used 2 layers of the batting, which is something you would use for quilting, and then my top fabric. Before I put the 4 layers together, I actually drew on my fabric with my ruler and my pen that disappears with heat, and I drew my straight line, so I had something nice to follow. Once you've quilted it all, so it's all nice straight lines, so there's no need to do anything fancy with your machine, just sew the straight lines. Once you're done that and made sure everything is nice and square, we can lay that to one side. You notice there I've got a zip. I'm going to use a black zip, not because I think a black zip's good, but it will show up. I want to have something for my tab here. So this is going to be a little bit of fabric, which I fold in half, and then I'm going to open out, take one edge into the middle and the other edge into the middle, put these two together, give them a nice press, and then probably top stitch all the way around, and then that's going to get folded like so, and will get put in there in the seam, but we'll get to that soon. The other piece I've got here is this handle bit, okay, which again is just doing the same idea, folding it in like this, folding it in at half and then folding it in and folding it in and stitching. Onto the handle bit I would also put some wadding, so by the time I'm finished you'll have that bit in there, and it will just give it a wee bit more body. The other bits I've got here are long strips, 2 long strips, so that's for this bit here. Let me show you. So inside I don't have any raw edges showing, and that's because I've put a piece of binding on this bit. This box, it's harder to see because it's obviously the same as the outer fabric, but I'm going to use this bit, which is 3 inches wide, and it's going to get folded in half and used as my binding. So I've got 2 bits like that. I've also got some for the inside, which is going to, if I turn this out this way, I'm going to finish the raw edges there. Next stage is to take our binding. That was a bit of fabric which is 3 inches wide by at least the width of the side where you're putting your zipper on. So I've got tails either end, which will get cut off eventually, but for the minute I'm happy to have excess. So you take your fabric, fold it in half, put your edges together there, okay, finger press. You don't need to iron this, in fact it's better probably not to iron it. Next thing you're going to do is take your cover fabric, turn it to the wrong side, and you're going to position this on here like that. Oops. Clip it all the way along. Take it to the machine. So you're going to stitch 1/4 inch all the way along here to the very end. Once you've done that, it should look like this end, which has already been done. So that has been stitched on, and I'm now going to press that up. So you see that I'm pressing the excess this way as opposed to that way, so it's coming into the binding. So the zip is now going to go in place. The zip I've got is longer than I actually need. And the reason for that is I don't really want to have to stop and move the head up and down when I'm sewing. Because this is the wrong side of the bag, I must remember to put the right side of the zip down the way. So it's the right side face down. And I'm going to position it so that the edge of my zipper tape is basically on the edge of the folded, on the binding that you can see. And I will take that and stitch, obviously pin it all the way down. In fact, in this case, I generally prefer not to pin it and just position it as I'm sewing. I feel it's just easier. But if you're more comfortable pinning, that's fine. If you want to tack, that's fine. So, stitch down there. Once that's been stitched, piece is going to get folded over, and we're going to top stitch along here. Now you can see the zipper teeth, that's exactly what I want. And that will be the top of her bag. So if I turn this one out, you'll be able to see the one side that's been done. So there's my zip, and there's the binding. And it should be, you can see just the edge under there. That row of stitching is where this bit's been stitched down. So let's do that. So zipping as we described earlier, you can see the white stitching. I didn't change my thread, so that's my zip where it's been stitched. You notice it is very close to the edge. That's because I didn't actually change my foot, my machine foot, to a zipper foot. I just left the normal foot on, and when you do that, you get a nice, the foot runs along the zip teeth and you get a nice straight line. So that was done. Then I folded this over and did the top stitching on from the front side, because that's the side you're going to see, and there's the top stitching line on the inside. So the next we're going to put the other half of the zip onto the other side of the bag. First thing to do is draw an imaginary line from your fabric here running up across the zip, because I need to know where the zip starts and stops. Clearly can't put the zip in like that, otherwise it would be a squint bag. So do the same this side, straight up from this line and then about there. You can notch it with your scissors if you want. Undo the zip now. Now, we are going to be very careful here, because I need to turn the zip over so that the right side of my zip is face down on the fabric. And I need to ensure that that pin is on the edge of the fabric and the zip tape is on the edge of this bit. And then we'll pin it in place. Now this is when you certainly do need to put a pin in. You don't want that to move. And you'll pin all the way along, and when you do that, hopefully you'll find that the other pin will be in the correct place. And then you can pin all the way along if you wish. Oops, that's slightly wrong, haven't I? The other thing that's really important and can often happen is you can get into a little bit of a twist. So just be sure that when you do this and turn it out, and it's always worth checking, that when you pull your zip head, oh, it's so sticky, but it is, there we go. So that's stitched in there, that'll get folded down so that the zip is on the right side. Just worth checking before you stitch. So hopefully that was nice and easy to sew. Because the zip is extra long, you could move the head up and down. It gives you more room at the sewing machine. So the next thing I'm going to do is zip it halfway up. I found the middle by putting these two bits together and putting a pin in. Okay, so I've got the middle of the bag and pinned it. turn it out. Now we're getting ready to sew the sides. Do the zip up now. So I want to put the teeth onto that pin. That pin will come out before I sew, alright? You can't see it, so don't stitch over it, but I'm going to put a couple of clips in there just to hold that in place. Round to the other end. Sorry. Make sure that the teeth are on that pin again. Again, that pin will come out. Pin it together. Same that side. Now, I would suggest that you move that head much further down. Makes it easier for turning. So we're going to sew down this side, and we're also going to sew down here. Really important that your zip head is in the middle. You don't want it over here when you stitch, otherwise you will be cutting it off. Now, do you remember in here, this pin I said I was going to remove? Now's the time to remove it, because in the same position you're going to put your little tab. So the tab, if you remember, we've machined it top and bottom, and fold that in half like that, and then we're going to place it in between the layers that way. So it's going to go in there where your zip is, and that I would clip in as well. Now, when it's tucked in that way, when you turn the bag out, obviously it's going to pop out the right side. So we'll stitch down there and stitch the other end here. So you'll be glad to hear we're on the home straight now. So both edges I've stitched down. Going over the zipper part, just go backwards and forwards, just to be extra sure. Now I'm going to take a piece of fabric and bind here. At the beginning I had a white piece of fabric. I've decided to go for a colour, just because then you'll be able to see a bit better what I'm doing. So I've kept this at 3 inches wide. I'm folding it in half with my edges together. And now, sorry, now I am going to put it on there. So you notice I'm overhanging quite a long way. And again, pin it, clip it, go for it, I don't mind. Just a nice straight line. So you're going to go from here, where you've got the fabric underneath. So from there, all the way along and stop at this other end. When you do that, it will look like this. So you see that I've trimmed this side already. And let's just do that. Get rid of that thread. It says. So that's been stitched on. Next thing I'm going to do is bring it up and take it over. So I've taken it over, and you can see my overlap there still. So I'm now going to take this end and fold it in like that, and then turn that down. Now it's quite tricky trying to do it here. When you do it, it'll be much easier, but you will get a nice neat edge. So that's one side, and you are going to eventually sew it across, all the way across, and you will do the same at this end as at the first end. So do that with the two ends, and that will be the ends. So binding is all on, tabs in, see it there, going to come out the right way. And now we need to do the final stage, which is boxer corners. So we are going to take this fold, sorry, there we go, this fold, and it's going to lie on this seam. So by doing that, I can feel the seam under there and get that to lie nice and flat. Now, the closer you are, you're going to stitch across the way, you're going to make a triangle. The closer you are to the point, the smaller the triangle that you stitch, the shallower your box will be. I'm aiming for about 2 inches down from the top, I think, there or thereabouts, maybe just slightly more. Oh no, I think 2 inches. So let's just put a clip in there, just to hold that for a minute. Shall I show you another little trick? So if we now, that should be a 90-degree corner. So if we now lay this on here, so that I've got that edge along there and this one parallel to this edge, that's where my mark's going to be. When I put my ruler on, oops, sorry. So it should, so you can see here I've come down almost 3 squares in the same there. It should land in the same place, so that's where you're going to stitch. So draw your line with your marker and then that's where you're going to stitch. Now, I've already done that on this one. So I've stitched along there. I need to get rid of that marker pen, but I can do that in a second. When I turn it out, you can see this end. So that's that, the end there. What we must remember when we're doing the other end, so that's the end with the tab. What we must remember is this bit we made needs to go in before we actually stitch these two right lines on the other end of the bag. So this is where it's slightly fiddly. So I would pin, so I've pinned one side, drawn the line. Imagine I've drawn the line this side and I'm going to pin it. Then what I'm going to do is take my handle. Now this is the side I want to see when I've stitched. So this is the side that's going to be this way in the bag. And I'm going to take one end and poke it through here. Now I might need to undo my pin to get that in. I might not. I think I'm going to have to. So you want the halfway mark of here to be on top of that lower seam. Just a fiddle. If you don't want to do this, the other way of course to do it, I can show you in this bag. So that's what you're aiming for. If you don't want to actually have it stitched in the seam, the other way you could do it is when you've finished, fold your ends in and just do a top stitch. I think it's much nicer in the seam, so I would aim to get it in here. So let's get it in. So again, make sure you've got the middle bit up right. I'm just going to pin this. If you're finding trouble getting your handle in, another way to do it is pin the handle on the outside. So you can see I've got to pin both ends here. I would then tack that in place. You don't want to leave any pins in while you're turning it out and stitching. So before you've done the triangle on the corner, pin the handle out on, tack it, then turn your bag the other way out and do your triangle across here. Just another way of doing it. Some might find it easier, some not. An alternative. I should just add that both the designs I've done here is non-directional in pattern. If you select a fabric that does have a direction, then you will need to have a seam in the bottom here. So you would do that right at the beginning before you start quilting. You get your two pieces of fabric, cut, join, so that one direction is going one way and the other. Let me just show you quickly. So here's two bits of fabric. If you wanted to do this in this bag, obviously it would be fine that side, but on this side it would be upside down. So the way around it is to have your piece of fabric and cut it and then stitch it together like that. And obviously these are two different fabrics, but you get the idea. So they're going to be the right way up when you actually make the bag up. and that seam would be in the bottom down here. Okay, till next time.